Okay, again, my name is Jonna Williams, and today we're talking about how to respond to an RFP. So, tips for finding bid opportunities with the City of Chicago. All bids valued over $100,000 and RFPs are publicly advertised in the Chicago Sun-Times as well on the Department of Procurement Services website. So daily you can go into the Sun-Times and see upcoming bid opportunities, and you can also go to DPS's website and everything that is upcoming or has been advertised is posted there. So on the slides you can see the links to our website. Bid opportunities are also posted here in this room, which is the bid and bond room. You can pick up CD-ROMs and then see a listing of all of our opportunities out there. Also, on the Department of Procurement Services website, we have what's called the buying plan. The buying plan gives you a quarterly forecast of all of our upcoming opportunities, so things that are projected for the future. One good way to network, especially if you're a small firm or a firm that's certified as an MBE, a WBE, or a DBE, is going to what we call pre-proposal conferences and pre-bid conferences. So you'll see in the Sun-Times and also on our website, for every project there is a pre-proposal conference or a pre-bid conference. There'll be larger firms, you can ask questions about the project or just get an overview of the project. In addition to that, if you can't attend the conferences, you can also come to this room and look at the bid takeout list. The bid takeout list is for any firm who has picked up a proposal, or for our electronic process, anyone who has registered to see a proposal. So that can give you an idea of different firms looking at different projects, different firms who you potentially would like to network with. So what's the difference between an RFP and a competitive bid? So an RFP is a request for proposals, and it also could be a request for qualifications, which is an RFQ. So request for proposals or qualifications is a method of procurement to hire professional services consultants and to implement new projects on various professional service disciplines. For each project, there'll be an RFP, so each RFP or RFQ is project specific. And RFPs are used when the city doesn't have in-house expertise to fully know how to perform the project. So basically, we're looking for vendors to look at a general scope of services and then tell us how they'll best be fulfilled. Competitive bids, on the other hand, is a method of procurement to purchase supplies, equipment, services, such as construction. Competitive bids they have a detailed bid specification prepared. It's structured. The city knows exactly what we're looking for, exactly how much we need, and there'll be proposal pages which give you line items telling you the good or service, how much we estimate that we'll be using, the unit of measure, and those are based upon price. RFPs are not based upon price. So bid specification details of every aspect of a product or service are detailed in competitive bids. RFPs give you a general scope of services, and it may not have every single detail. Again, we don't have the in-house expertise to know exactly what we're looking for. Also, RFPs are not based upon price. We're looking for the most qualified firm. So competitive bids, the lowest bidder wins. RFPs, we're going to have an evaluation process, and we're going to determine which vendor best suits the needs of the city. For both competitive bids and RFPs, I should point out, you do have to be responsive and responsible. Responsive means that you respond to all the requirements we're looking for. Responsible means that you're a financially sound firm and you're qualified to perform the services. For an RFP, again, there's an evaluation process, and we'll select the vendor based upon who's highest ranked. And sorry, I'll go back. One thing I would like to point out with the RFP for the last bullet point, price can be negotiated for RFPs. And if you're responding to an RFP, it's important that you know that the price that you give us, the city may ask for a better price or a lower price, but we'll never give you more than what you've given us in the proposal. So for purposes of this workshop, we're going to use the sample RFP, which you all should have picked up outside. This is a project that was issued last year, and it's for parking enforcement services, but it's very detailed, and it'll give you a general idea of what an RFP looks like. RFQs look very similar, but the difference is for an RFP, generally only one contractor will be awarded. For RFQs, what happens is we're looking for qualifications. Firms that are qualified will then go into a pre-qualified vendor pool, and then we'll issue what's called task orders in the futures. So task orders will be smaller projects that'll go out to the pool of vendors that we've determined are qualified, and then you'll have to submit what we call a mini RFP for the task order. So with RFQs, you may be awarded a contract, and you may not ever have any work or perform any services on it. RFP, you'll be awarded the contract, and you will perform the services. So for pretty much every project in the city, we have MBE and WBE goals, or either DBE goals. So minority business enterprise is what we call an MBE. Women business enterprise is what we call a DBE. And these are for city-funded projects. Disadvantaged business enterprises, referred to as DBEs, are for federally funded projects. Depending on the RFP, there may be other local preferences. For instance, if you're a city-based business, sometimes you can submit an affidavit saying you're a city-based business, and then you're given a slight advantage for that. Or we have several, so you're given an artificial advantage if you apply for those and you're qualified. When you submit your RFPs, we're moving towards our electronic process, but as of right now, we still have paper bids and electronic bids. So please be sure to look at the RFP and understand how you must submit your proposal. If it's an electronic process, you'll have to go on to our website, register as a supplier through the iSupplier system, and then you'll go into our bidding site and you'll electronically upload your proposal. If it's a paper process, you'll prepare your proposal on standard paper, printed double-sided. Understand that any material submitted to the city will not be returned, so we discourage the use of expensive papers or binders or anything like that. You'll submit an original, and also you'll have to submit electronic copies, either on USB drives or CDs. Your electronic proposals must be word searchable. Sometimes we see vendors will put restrictions on printing or the electronic proposals. Please don't do that, because we'll have to come back to you and ask you to make them word searchable and remove any restrictions. Every section of the proposal should be distinguished with either tabs if it's on paper or organized into appropriate sections if it's electronic. And we'll go through the required content of the proposals in just a moment. Each page should be numbered. Proposals must be clear, concise, and well organized. And one thing that's important to note is whether you're submitting electronically or via paper, you must submit a redacted copy of your proposal. If there's any confidential information, trade secrets, anything that you don't want released to the public, you need to have a redacted proposal. And also you need to clearly label confidential information and that type of thing. Anything that's submitted to the city is subject to the Freedom of Information Act, and the CPO will use her discretion of what information can be released. Generally speaking, you can rest assured your financial information, which is a requirement of RFPs, won't be released. Things that you mark confidential, trade secrets, we won't release that type of stuff. But once a contract is awarded, we do submit electronically for our website all proposals that were submitted. including the vendor who was awarded the contract. So if you submit a proposal in response to a solicitation, your proposal will be released. That's why it's important that you submit a redacted proposal, which has any information that you don't want publicly made available redacted. And also, when you do redact the proposal, make sure it's clear that, if you have a whole section blacked out, you know this section has been redacted, and not that it just appears that it's missing. So starting here, we're going to flip through the sample material that you should have picked up. And again, this is an RFP for parking enforcement services. The cover page will tell you the lead department. So the Department of Procurement Services is responsible for doing all the contracting for the various user departments. So for instance, this proposal is for the Department of Finance. On the cover, you will see when the pre-proposal conference will be held. They're not mandatory, but we strongly encourage that you attend them. We also encourage, if you're submitting for the first time you attend, or if you've never submitted an electronic proposal, you attend. During the pre-proposal conference for the electronic proposals, we will clearly go over the submission process, the city's site, how to upload your proposal, and all of that. So there's important information in addition to networking with other firms. Something else you'll see, the last line, is the due time for proposals. Proposals that are paper must be submitted in this room by the time as noted on this clock here. Late proposals are taken at the discretion of the Chief Procurement Officer. For our electronic system, whatever the deadline is, the system will lock you out after that time, so you won't be able to submit a proposal past the due time. We flip through, there's a just general letter to vendors with an optional survey. You'll see that all of our proposals have a table of contents letting you know where everything is, and a list of all of the exhibits that are attached. If you flip to page 1, first you'll see the general invitation and a general statement of what the city is looking for. The next section tells you how to access the RFP and all of our materials. There's some definitions. On page 2, there's an important bolded note that you are responsible for obtaining all of the materials in response to the RFP. Often the city will issue clarifications or addendum, which may just answer questions, or it may change the scope of services. So it's important that you ensure that you've looked at or picked up any addendum that we issue. For the electronic system, the system won't let you submit your proposal unless you've acknowledged that you've seen the addendum, so that's helpful. You won't be able to submit unless you look at the addendum or clarification. The next section is a general background, which will help you understand what the city is looking for. For instance, for this particular project, the city is looking for parking enforcement officers, so the people who are on the streets issuing tickets. And essentially this type of service is the city doesn't have the manpower to staff this operation, so we're looking for a consultant or a vendor to come in, staff the project, and execute the contract per our requirements. If you flip to page 4, you'll see the contract term. It's important to understand how long the contract will last. So anyone who is awarded a contract for this project may be in contract with the city for up to 8 years. So there's a 5-year term for this project, and then the city has 3 unilateral extension options. The next section is general information and guidelines. In this section of the RFP, we go over how to communicate with the city. When you are looking at RFPs or come to a pre-proposal conference, you may meet various people in the city from the user department. It's important to note that you can only communicate with the procurement specialist who's noted on the cover of the contract. Our other city officials or authorities won't be able to discuss the project with you, only the Department of Procurement Services, and the RFP will outline who that person is, their phone number, as well as their email. Also, please note that the procurement specialist working on the project will only be able to answer general questions. More detailed questions will have to be submitted in writing via email or either our online discussion for our electronic system, and any questions that we receive will be answered officially through an addendum, and that's to ensure that everyone has access to information or clarifications. So we won't be able to talk to you in great detail about projects, but we will issue addendums in writing for questions or clarifications. The next section is the pre-proposal conference, when and where that'll be. Page 5, section B, we outline again the deadline for the proposal. And in this section, you'll want to carefully look at how we're asking you to respond to the proposal. Is it on paper? Is it electronically? You'll see item number 3 tells you that they must be delivered, who they're delivered to, where they're delivered. Item number 5 tells you if you're submitting a paper proposal, how your package must be marked, and it must be marked as we've outlined here. Also, your package must be sealed and all your documents enclosed. Number 4, I'll go back to, it's important to submit your original paper and have it marked as original, and any electronic copy must be a mirror copy of the original. On the next page, page 6, we have the procurement timetable, which tells you the target date for all the key activities. Please note that should we issue an addendum, we may push the proposal due date back. It'll never be prior to the date listed here, but it may be pushed back. So you'll need to be sure that you're submitting in the appropriate time. E, as I stated, anything that's confidential, again, it's very important that you mark confidential information as confidential. So 1, we don't post it, and 2, should there be a FOIA request, we don't release that information. So moving to page 7, preparing your proposal and required information. So again, it tells you here the type of paper, if you're responding to a construction or aviation project, there may be drawings or different things that are needed for the project. So please clearly understand what you need to submit and how it should be submitted. Going to page 8, required contents of proposals. You'll notice that regardless of what the project is, on this slide here, these are the key components that are going to be required for all RFPs or RFQs. The first item is the cover letter. So the cover letter for RFP is similar to a bid execution page. So basically, you need an authorized officer of your firm to sign, and the cover letter is committing you to perform the services should you be awarded a contract. There's key information that we need to know in your cover letter, including the number of years you've been in business, what type of company you are, your key personnel or the principal person. Please put who we can contact with. Often, if we're missing information and we don't understand something, we'll reach out to your firm. So whoever's listed in the cover letter must be a standing employee who is not transitional, someone you expect to be around, because if we can't contact you in the future, you may be disqualified from the process. For that person, indicate their telephone number and also their email address. We do a lot of communication via email, so have a valid email address that will be checked by somebody. Something else that is important is for every RFP or RFQ, we'll submit a sample professional service agreement, and there is outlined the city's key terms and conditions. You'll need to review that and let us know if you have any objections to our standard terms and conditions. With that said, please note a lot of our standard terms and conditions are necessitated by law or ordinance, so we can't always change these things. And if you have material objections to our standard terms and conditions, that may disqualify you. In your cover letter, you also need to acknowledge any addenda that we've issued. Next is an executive summary, which is part of every RFP or RFQ. You must submit the executive summary. In this section, we'll detail what we're looking for, but often we're looking for you to acknowledge our goals and our objectives and a statement of how you intend to achieve them. Moving on to number 3, professional qualifications and specialized experience of respondent and team members committed to the project. So we need to know who's going to be working on your team and why are they working on your team? What makes them qualified? What makes them able to either manage the project or the staff or whatever it may be? We also want to know if you propose to have subcontractors, who are these people going to be? If there's MBE, WBE, DBE goals, you'll identify those subs. That's a mandatory requirement, and we'll tell you what percentage, but you'll identify all the people who will be working on your team. Next is company profile information, which is a standard form. It's attached as Exhibit 2 to this RFP. Please use the form that the city has provided. Even if you type up the information and you include all the key information, we still want you to use our form that we provided. So for the company profile, that's telling us about your company and your company structure. If you plan on doing a joint venture with another firm, attached to the RFP will be our Schedule B, and that will need to be executed by your firm and whoever you plan on partnering with. Flipping to the next page, company references and client profile information. This is also a standard form that'll be attached as an exhibit. We'll need a minimum of 3 references for every project. And for the bullet points listed below B, you must provide all of this information. If you don't, it's not seen as being complete. I've noticed a lot of firms don't necessarily want to tell you the total dollar of the contract, but we need to know that. And if you don't provide that or you don't want to provide that, provide us with another reference where you can provide that. And when you're providing references, make sure that your references are appropriate for the type of services. We see that often where someone may give you a good reference, but it's for one type of project. You know, if you're providing for parking enforcement and you're telling us about, you know, vending or, you know, working for construction, that doesn't give us a feel of your references for this type of project. So they should be relevant to the services and not just good references.
If you're just starting, you know, this whole process, how do you submit your references if you've never done a city job before?
So it doesn't have to be for a city job, but the question was if you're a startup or just starting, how do you submit references? So you'll have to use your discretion, but we're not looking, when we're evaluating, we are looking at how they're relevant, but initially we're just looking that you provided 3. So if you're a startup and maybe you have a personal reference, you would have to include that, or if you'll do your best, but make sure you include 3 references as best as you can. If you don't have any clients, for instance, maybe you've worked with professional organizations or that type of thing, so that may work. Section C, a lot of people miss this, but this is the capacity to perform. Please include this statement. We're looking to see if you have a lot of projects, are you going to have time to work on our project? Are you going to have the resources to work on our project? For this, we're looking for parking enforcement, so we're looking for you to staff, you know, the city, and as you know, we're a large city. Meters are throughout the city. So let's say you have 10 other projects and you only have 50 people on your staff. that would be a red flag to us. So we're looking to see that you're able to perform and you have the capacity and the resources, and also any dedicated resources that you would be able to provide to the city. The next section is, as a part of our contracts, you do have to have a business license and have business authority in the state of Illinois. Some of our projects are for consulting, such as financial services or auditing and that type of thing. So we have firms that are located outside of the city, which is fine, but you also have to have a business license and be registered with the Illinois Secretary of State to work on projects in the city for the City of Chicago.
So you have to have your State of Illinois LLC and a City of Chicago business license.
City of Chicago business license, and then registered with the Secretary of State, which shows that you have good standing and you're able to perform business in the state of Illinois. So all of the key websites and information are detailed after D of where you can go to get information to either register or the Business Affair website is there as well. Number 4, professional qualifications, specialized experience, local availability of key personnel, and who will be dedicated to the services in the RFP. So for this section, we're looking for resumes. We're looking for, again, it's slightly redundant to the previous section I outlined, but who are your team members? How are they qualified? What unique things can they bring to the team or the services? And also, local availability. So for instance, if we're looking for parking enforcement in Chicago and your firm is based out of St. Louis, you know, that would be an issue. Yes. Yes, and often, you know, we're asking for a staffing plan. We're telling you what the job description is. One instance is I did a project for cashiering services. So the firm who responded, they didn't have all the staff in place because they need to know they have a contract before they get the staff. But they do need to tell us our cashiers are, you know, XYZ. We'll have this many managers. We'll have this many supervisors. We're going to have this many cashiers. The role of the cashier will be this. The role of the supervisor will be this. And the role of the manager will be this. Flipping the page to number 12. Page 12, number 5, the implementation and management plan. As you see here in this RFP, this one is very detailed, and there's a lot of things that we're looking for. For instance, the people who will provide this service will be using computerized devices. They'll need to know how to operate those devices, how to print tickets. In addition, if you can imagine being a person who's issuing tickets, you may come across a disgruntled person, car owner, and we're looking to know, like, will people be able to respond to that appropriately? So essentially, if someone's yelling at you, you can't yell back. You know, we're looking for people who will be able to read and write and speak in English, people who have good verbal skills. So these are all things that we're asking you to respond to and tell us how you're going to accomplish these goals. This type of project, we're also looking for the firm to perform reference checks on their employees, to look at the employee's work history, to do criminal and background checks, and all these things. So you'll need to outline every key component in your plan of what we're looking for and how you're going to accomplish that. And then on page 13, your approach. So for this project, for example, we're looking for you to outline the duties of the officers, what hours are people going to work, maybe scheduling and how you'll staff, and if parking hours are from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., how will you ensure that there's staff at all times? This type of project, the people working as well as the contractor will have to provide the city with reports and logs. So we need to know that you'll be able to do that. And a lot of our projects, we anticipate there may be obstacles or troubles or problems, so you'll need to tell us how you foresee handling any problems or obstacles that may come up. Next is an organization chart. This is a key component to RFPs, which you must submit, and the organization chart will give us a structure of not only your firm, but also your subcontractors. Number 6, dedicated resources. Maybe if it's an IT project, your firm has some new software or some new capabilities, it would be important for you to point that out here. For this project, one of the key components is a staffing plan, so that's here and here. Number 7, cost proposal and compensation schedules are always provided as an exhibit to the RFP. It's important that you use our exhibit. If you don't use the exhibit and detail your costs per how we have it outlined, you will be rejected from the process. We need to be able to look at all firms equally. So if we're looking for you to give us an hourly rate, you have to give us an hourly rate. If it's an hourly rate, that often includes your overhead, all your costs, all your burdens, so you need to put all of that into the rate. Often for RFQs, you'll notice we won't have compensation in the RFP or the RFQ, but we'll ask you for your pricing at the end of the project. As I explained, RFQs, we're looking for a qualified pool of vendors who will do work in the future. So when you're awarded a contract, we ask you for your maximum hourly rates. And again, you need to know that these rates will be set for the term of the contract. And the max is what the max is. You won't be able to come back, 5 years from now and say, oh, I didn't know X, Y, Z, so now I need to increase my costs. We will not increase your costs. The rates are set for the duration of the contract. Number 8, financial statements. You must provide financial statements for 3 years. We understand if you're a small business, you may not have audited financial statements, but you have to provide something where we can get an assessment of your firm. And essentially, we're just looking to see that you're financially sound, and if we have an 8-year project, you'll be able to be in business for the 8 years and carry out the services. So yes, and we'll need to see it for 3 years. So whoever is the president or the owner of the firm, that would follow on that person to show financials.
For your personal.
Yes, yes. Yes, if you don't have audited, essentially provide us with something, and we want to see 3 years worth. Number 9 is the Minority and Women Business Enterprise Commitment. This project is city funded, so it's MBE and WBE. If there's goals for the project, you have to respond with certified firms who are going to work with you. If you're certified yourself as both an MBE and a WBE, for example, you can only perform or self-perform one aspect of the project. You can't perform as both on any project ever. So with that said, in the special conditions, which are always an exhibit to the RFP or RFQ, we have Schedule Cs and Schedule Ds, and you'll have your subcontractors fill out the Schedule C. They must be certified with the city, and you'll have to provide their certification letter. The Schedule D is filled out by the prime contractor, and you'll detail who you'll be working with, what percentage they'll be getting of the contract, or potentially how much you'll be paying them. This has to be outlined, and essentially this is a contract to work with the firm. Let's say you commit to work with firm A, and some point in the future you decide that you don't want to work with firm A anymore. Only the Department of Procurement Services can dissolve that agreement. You can't just say, I don't want to work with you anymore. You have to submit a substitution request to the Department of Procurement Services. It has to be approved by the Department of Procurement Services, and it has to be for a good reason. For instance, if they're not working, they're not performing, that type of thing. But often we'll see firms just change their mind. Once you've submitted your Schedule Ds and Schedule Cs, these are the people who you're committed to. On the next page, number 10, is your EDS. An EDS is the disclosure of the ownership of your company. It's an electronic process. You have to go online, you have to file your EDS electronically, and you must submit your certificate of filing with your proposal. And this is for the prime contractor. Number 11, we're looking for any legal actions against your firm within the past 5 years. Again, this is just to help us have an assessment of will you be able to perform for the duration of the contract. Number 12, our contracts have insurance requirements. We don't expect you to go out and get insurance for something that you're just submitting a proposal to, but you have to provide a statement or evidence that should you be awarded a contract, you can obtain the necessary insurance. So essentially, all the things we've gone over here are the key components to submitting a proposal. As you're going through your proposal and creating your proposal, I highly recommend you make a checklist of everything that's detailed here and these items. The very first step of evaluating your proposal is just determining, did you submit everything we've asked you for? If you have not and you've missed anything, that could be grounds for disqualifying your firm from moving forward to the next stage of the process. And every RFP is evaluated by a different team. So maybe you've done business with the city before. You should act as if the city has no idea who you are, because we don't often have the people who you've worked with in the past evaluating proposals. So you need to be thorough but concise. You need to fully explain who you are, how you can perform the services, and most importantly, you need to make sure that these key components have all been addressed. Again, for this process, we're looking for which firm best suits the city, and each evaluation committee is separate and different. So there may be a time where you accidentally miss something and the city will contact you and say, can you please provide this? You didn't provide it. There may be another time where the city just says you're out. So it's very important to ensure you've given us what we're looking for in some capacity, some aspects. So page 17, evaluating the proposals. So the city will form a group called the EC, the Evaluation Committee. This committee is approved by the Department of Procurement Services. We ensure that it's a diverse group, so we're looking for different ethnic backgrounds, we're looking for men and women, we're looking for people from different city user departments, and basically we want to make sure that everyone has a fair chance at getting evaluated. The EC committee has to sign codes of conduct which state that even if you worked with the city in the past and this EC member has knowledge of your firm and they really didn't like you, they can't evaluate you based upon that. They can only evaluate you based upon what you've put in your proposal. So again, that goes to don't assume we know you, but also if we do know you, we're going to take measures to ensure that you're evaluated fairly. The specialist who's noted on the head of the contract will be a part of the evaluation committee, and our job in procurement is to ensure that you're evaluated fairly. Something else with the evaluation committees, should there be press in the media about your firm, none of that can be included in the evaluation. We're just looking at what you've submitted, and we're looking at who is best qualified to meet the needs of the city. So again, the first phase is the preliminary proposal assessment. So we're just going through to make sure you've submitted everything that was in the RFP and required. The second phase is the proposal evaluation. That's where the members of the EC will take all the proposals submitted. They will independently go through the proposals and evaluate them based upon the guidelines which are published in the RFP. So you'll know, looking at the RFP, how we're evaluating you. We'll never change this, and we can only evaluate you based upon what we've published in the RFP. Phase 3 is oral presentations, system demonstrations, or potentially site visits. So once proposals are evaluated, we'll look at the top firms, and then we may ask you to come into the city and provide more information. Sometimes we see that people put things on paper, but when we get them in here, they can't demonstrate that. So we'll have the team there, we'll ask questions, and we're looking for you to tell us in person or show us in person what it is that you put on paper. If it's an IT project or some project where we're asking you to form some type of technology or a system, we'll ask you to demonstrate that. Or we may want to come to your firm and take a look and see your operations and what your business is. So the next few pages go through all the information that I discussed with you and tells you how the city is going to evaluate you. Finally, the selection process. The city may determine the best vendor after phase 2, which is where the evaluation committee goes through your proposals and scores you. Most times we will have at a minimum oral presentations and ask firms to come in. So from there, the evaluation committee will determine who is the best qualified. Again, this is based upon our scoring system, so whoever's the highest ranked is who we select. And from there, they'll make a recommendation to the commissioner of that department, as well as the chief procurement officer. And at that time, we'll be able to notify everyone of the city's decision. Some RFPs, it takes 6 months. Some RFPs, it may take 2 years. But regardless of the outcome, we will notify you in writing of either you've been selected or you have not been selected. So once you submit a proposal, rest assured at some point we'll notify you of our decision. Page 21 goes over addenda. Again, it's very important to note that should we issue addenda, this may change the scope of services. It may change what we're looking for. It might just answer questions, which will help you with your proposals, but you must review any addenda prior to creating and submitting your proposals. The next few sections are just some city ordinances, and then as you flip through, you'll see the different exhibits, starting with Exhibit 1, which is the scope of services. The scope of services is often taken from here, and this will be the scope for the contract. Sometimes it's altered slightly, but whatever we've advertised here, it has to be very close to that for the contract awarded. You'll see our standard forms for Exhibit 2 on page 8 and Exhibit 3 on page 9. These are the 38 and 39. These are the 2 forms I was telling you. Please use these forms exactly as they are here when submitting your response. Page 40, you'll see our cost proposal. You have to use the schedules that are in the RFP and provide your pricing based upon how we're asking for it, be an hourly rate or whatever else. And understand that the pricing that you provide here will be set for the duration of the contract. The city may ask you to lower your price, but we will never give you more than what you've submitted. Page 41 goes through the MBWB special conditions. I should note, sometimes you may feel that there's not an opportunity to subcontract any of the project, and you'll ask for a waiver. In this section, it goes through the waiver process, which is submitting a letter to the CPO requesting a waiver. However, you can't just submit the letter. There's a list of assist agencies in this exhibit, starting on page 55. You'll have to contact all these assist agencies. There's a sample letter, and before you can request the waiver, you have to show us that you contacted all these agencies who could potentially provide you subcontracting opportunities. And should you still feel you don't have any opportunities, then you can request a waiver. The schedules are included in this exhibit. On page 71, you'll see instructions for filling out your EDS, the electronic disclosure statement. It is a legal requirement for all contracts. Anyone awarded a contract with the City of Chicago must submit and file an EDS. Page 77 shows you the insurance requirements for the contract. Again, to submit a proposal, you do not need to get insurance. However, you do need to provide a statement or evidence that should you be awarded a contract, you can obtain the necessary insurance. Exhibit 8 goes through local preferences on page 81. You'll often see these with competitive bids. You may or may not see them with RFPs. Again, these are optional, and if you submit them, you'll be given an artificial advantage when evaluating the proposals based upon what you submit and how much they state you can get. The last exhibits are for the particular project. For instance, this is a data policy, or we have a contract where you may be getting public information or private information. We may have a HIPAA policy. So anything here will be incorporated into your contract, and they give you standards of how to deal with information or city requirements to perform the services. And then finally, the last exhibit will be the City of Chicago Professional Service Agreement. That's never attached to the RFP itself. However, it's posted online as a separate attachment where you can go and download it. It's a lengthy document, so we don't include it in the RFPs. One thing I didn't mention is conflict of interest. Should you know that you have conflict of interest, for instance, maybe if you're awarded this contract for the city, you're doing similar services for the state, and maybe that contract requires that you review or approve the city's contracts or services, that would be seen as a conflict of interest, and we expect you to tell us anything like that up front. Should we deem that there's a conflict of interest and you haven't disclosed it, and what's important with your disclosure is how you'll deal with it so that you don't have a conflict of interest. For some projects, we do see that, and we need you all to tell us what it is and how you'll address it so that it's not an issue. In your EDS, you'll make a certification that you will comply with all laws. That is a requirement for our contracts. Something to note is we have living wage ordinances or minimum wage ordinances. These may change in the future. We don't know, but should they change, you'll have to comply with that. So again, tips for preparing your RFP proposal: read the entire RFP documents, follow the proposal format and content instructions, don't assume the city knows your firm. You'll have to submit your questions in writing to the Department of Procurement Specialist. In order to be responsive, we're just looking to see if you address and submitted everything that we're asking for, and that's phase 1. So to move to phase 2, you have to submit everything that is required. To be a responsible vendor, verify your company has the ability and the capacity to perform for each specified requirement of the proposal. Note that if something is stated as mandatory, you cannot take any exceptions to that. If it's mandatory, you must be able to comply with it and address it, or you will be rejected. Your proposal will be rejected. This goes through the exhibit forms that I detailed, the company profile information, company references. The MBE, WBE compliance is very important. You have to identify your subcontractors that are certified with the city up front. We have a link to our directory of all the certified firms. So should you not know any firms who may be able to perform on the contract, there's a directory where you can see who's certified in the different areas. review our standard terms and conditions that will be incorporated into any contract you would be awarded, and verify the existence of any addendum and that you've seen them and addressed them before submitting your proposal. Whoops, sorry. So, again, as I pointed out, paper submissions are submitted to this room. E-procurement submissions are submitted electronically via our e-procurement system. And after the published due date, you will not be able to submit your proposal. On the city's website, paper and e-procurement are segregated into 2 different tabs so you can see clearly which is which. Your cover letter must be signed by an authorized officer, and please make sure that you have the correct and appropriate contact information. Again, it's helpful if you use the RFP to make a checklist for yourself to ensure that you've completed everything. These are some helpful links for the e-procurement system, to register an iSupplier, what you must do before you can submit electronically. All of our addendum are posted online electronically. All of our pre-proposal conference attendees are posted online. Our takeout list is there. Our various workshop schedules. If you've never submitted through our e-procurement system, we offer a series of workshops so you can learn how to do that. And then we also have instructional documents. Sure.
So I noticed with the woman, minority-owned business, and also with the disability-owned business, they have an incentive. For the veterans-owned business, is not an incentive, it's not a percentage.
So those vary depending upon the RFP. Okay. So you will have to look for the requirement. Some of them, for an RFP process, you will be given points to your score, which would elevate your score. Some of them, depending on the type of service, you may be given artificial deduction on your cost. So it varies for project to project. The last thing to note is contract award is based upon successful negotiations. So there's a negotiation process. We may ask you to lower your pricing. Depending on your services, we may ask you to adjust those slightly. So you will come in and you'll negotiate with the city for your final contracts. And with an RFQ, please note that we may have multiple awards. And I think it's important to note that for an RFQ, which are the contracts where you go into a pre-qualified pool, when you are issued the contract, then you'll submit your pricing. It's helpful if you go online and you look at previous projects for the same services and see what other vendors have submitted for pricing, or what type of pricing has already been included in city contracts. I notice personally a lot of times small firms, there's a huge gap between small firms and big firms. So, you know, if one firm is being paid $500 an hour and you're only submitting 90, you know, so do your research and see what type of pricing is out there. All right, any other questions?
When you're
Oops, I'm supposed to use the mic.
forms, are they going to actually be PDFs that you can fill in, or is it going to be something you're going to have to use the typewriter for?
No. So, I'm sorry, you can repeat that. I forgot I was supposed to use the
For submitting electronic copies, are the PDFs going to be editable, or are they going to be just manually filling in typewriter style?
So basically, the electronic forms or the electronic proposal, it's the document you create, and you'll just make a PDF of it.
Okay, so if it's like a Word document, you guys don't have a preference if it's like a Word, PDF?
So the system only allows for PDF documents, but you'll create your Word version or what have you, convert it to a PDF, and that's what you upload into our system.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, well.
So this is my last question. When did you get paid from the city?
So our standard terms and conditions, our contracts stipulate that 60 days from the date of invoice. For your subcontractors, MBE, WB firms, there's language in the contract that mandates that you pay your subs within 7 days of you receiving payment from the city. And that's something important to note. Once you submit your invoice, it could be up to 60 days before you'll get your check.
Thank you.
Sure. Oh, I'll pass it.
Yeah, it's only that I didn't get you where we can check the price of other competitors.
Oh, so on the City of Chicago Department of Procurement Services website, we have a listing of all the contracts that have been issued through our department. So you can search based upon contract number, you can search based upon user department, you can search based upon type of service. So that's where you would start, and should you have trouble finding previous contracts, always contact the procurement specialist and we can help you in that area. Any other questions? So I've left my business cards right here on the ledge. Feel free to take one if you have questions in the future or you need assistance with anything in the future. I'll be more than happy to help you. So shoot me an email. That's usually best to get a hold of me, or give me a phone call. Thank you.